Well, I just want to say a quick prayer before we get started this morning. And so, Lord, we just come before you, Lord, and I just thank you for this sacrifice, Lord. And Lord, I just would ask that you would give each one of us the strength to be able to thank you not only in private but also in public, Lord. That we would have that full-on faith and trust in you, Lord, to be able to walk around the streets every single day, Lord. And without having to speak a word of your name, Lord, the people would know we are yours. And I just thank you for your sacrifice. In Jesus' name I pray, amen. So for those of you who didn't guess, you get me today. We were a little secretive. I mean, I was a little secretive on the Facebook group because I didn't put it was me, but it's me. So the funny thing is, I love how, I always say this, but God talks to me a lot in humor. And I've been laughing because I've been telling Willie for weeks, things come up and I'm like, I've got this sermon ready. It's out there and it's ready. And so this week he was like, hey, you said you have a sermon, right? And I said, yeah. And so I'm like, no problem. I'll put it all together. It'll be fine. And I started to kind of work on it Wednesday, thinking I was going to have the sermon done by Wednesday night and be set for the rest of the week. And Wednesday, about 2 hours before Bible study, God threw a wrench in that plan. And then Friday morning, I was working it over with Willie going, I have 2 sermons now. Which one? I literally had like 2 notebooks of like this and this and this and this. And I'm like, which one do I go with? And so obviously talking that out kind of helps bring forward what needs to be said. And so I'm going to be preaching the sermon that I didn't have written, but it's the sermon that came on Wednesday. And so we're going to be looking in the book of Genesis, specifically chapter 32, about Jacob and the story of Jacob. And today I want to kind of preface this sermon with, not necessarily a trigger warning, but a trigger warning, as in modern day speech of trigger warnings. But in the church, we like to get up here and we like to celebrate a lot of victory. And we like to sit here and we come up and we have testimonies and we have of sermons about what God's done in our life and how wonderful our life is and what he's had victory in. And a lot of the times we don't tend to speak as much about the struggles that we're going through in our life. And those that have not seen victory in places in their life yet. And so today's sermon is one for those who are struggling, those who are in the middle of it, those who have just started it, those that are having these issues that are just lingering out there that they haven't had that come to Jesus meeting with yet. And that's what we're starting with. Now, it's scientifically proven that if you speak out your struggles, it actually changes your brain. Like physically changes how your brain works. When we come together as a group and speak of the things that we're going through, if you come up and you speak about something, it physically changes your brain to speak about it. And so, there's just that thought of when we come together as a group and we speak not only of victory, but the things that we're going through, our life can have a tangible change to it. And it says multiple places in the Bible, I know James and Proverbs are a couple of them, but it says that we can speak life and death with our tongue. And so today I hope to speak a little bit of life into somebody that's struggling or has something going on that they're working through. So we're going to start with Jacob. Now, we're going to be primarily focusing on chapter 32. However, there's a whole lot of Jacob we have to get to know first before we get to that in this moment of he's having. So Genesis 25 is going to kind of start, and I'm going to paraphrase some of it, quote some of it, but that's kind of where we're starting. And we're starting kind of with who Jacob was born as. Now, if we look in chapter 25 of Genesis, And it starts in, kind of verse 22. It says, Jacob's parents were Isaac and Rebekah. Now, if you don't know Isaac and Rebekah, Isaac is the son that Abraham took up the hill to try and kill. So he's the son of Abraham and Sarah. And this is his firstborn child that they're having. He and Rebekah are unable to conceive a child, and so they pray and they pray and they pray, and God finally grants them a child, right? So Rebekah becomes pregnant, and verse 22 immediately says, the children struggled together within her. And she said, if it is thus, why is this happening to me? So she went to inquire of the Lord, and the Lord said to her, 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 people from within you shall be divided. The one shall be stronger than the other, and the older shall serve the younger. So not only do we find out that Rebekah is having children, but she's having twins. And we know that from the moment of conception, I personally don't know, but I know how alien it is from somebody on the outside to see babies moving in the womb. So I can only imagine what her feeling is having these 2 babies struggling and wrestling within her at the same time. And going, what on earth is going on inside me? To the point that she has to run to God and go, hey, is this how it always is? And God has to kind of prophesy over her and say, no, you've got 2 nations within you. And God, this is the second time he actually speaks of this prophecy, but he says, you have 2 nations, and the older shall serve the younger, which in this time is kind of unheard of. So we know that she's having twins, and when she does finally come to give birth, the first baby comes out, and they name him Esau. And the second baby comes out, and it says, grasping the heel of Esau. Now, just to get real weird, because this is where my brain goes, and I'd like to share how that works for me, is there's several different versions of the verse when you read it. Because one version says that he came out grasping, and there's another one that says that he reached out and grasped. Now, I don't know, again, giving birth, that thought in my head of the baby reaching out that hasn't been born yet and grabbing the heel of the one that's been born. And so that child, that second child, is now named Jacob. And this is who we're kind of working with today. Now, it also says specifically a couple verses down, as they grow, it says that Isaac loved Esau, and Rebekah loved Jacob. So we have this kind of right from the very beginning, we have a little sibling rivalry. From the moment they were conceived, they weren't getting along in the womb. They come out, and they're already grabbing each other. And then now we have favorites within the family. Of Isaac loves one, Rebekah loves the other. And then Jacob, throughout his life, doesn't do much to help that circumstance, because I think he's kind of the typical younger brother. I'm a younger sibling, so I know how it is to terrorize an older sibling. But they're the same age. They're minutes apart. But to terrorize his brother, because he sits there and there's multiple stories within the chapters that come after chapter 25, of different stories and ways that Jacob gets at his brother, because he sits there and one day he cooks all the meals. Now, you'll see it later, but Willie kind of said, Jacob is a certified mama's boy, in the way I would say it in America, right? And it says that he spent a lot of time in the tents with the women, and Esau was out being a hunter, manly man, right? So it comes at a time that Esau's been out, and he's been hunting, and he's in the field, and he comes home, and he's absolutely starving. And he's so hungry. And Jacob has been preparing food all day, right? And he's got this lovely meal set up. And his brother comes in and goes, hey, give me something to eat. I'm really hungry. And Jacob goes, I'll give you something to eat if you give me your birthright. Now, that thought in itself, he's sitting there, you typically younger brother, I want to be the one in charge. Because at this time, Esau being born first is very important. He's the one who's going to inherit things. He's the one who's going to get the double portion from Isaac. And Jacob goes, he's a sneaky little kid. I'll trade you. You say you're so hungry, and I'll trade you. And Esau, at this point in time, is so hungry, he goes, okay. So he sells his birthright in his family, the right to be called the eldest, the right to be called the authority, to his younger brother Jacob for a bowl of soup and some bread, because he's hungry. And this is just one of the many things that happens, because later on in life, we find that Jacob also continues to rile up his brother. And this one's a little bit bigger, because this is many years later, and Isaac is on later in life. And he calls to his sons and he says, Esau, go out to the field and bring me something to eat, because I love your food. I love your game and everything like that. Bring me something to eat, and I will give you my blessing. And Rebekah hears this as well. And she immediately, as soon as Esau leaves, she goes to Jacob. And she says, my sweet little boy Jacob, come here. And he goes, okay, Mom, what are we going to do? And she says, I have an idea. And we're going to get you to get the blessing over your brother. So she's like, I'm going to go cook a really good meal. You go out, get some goat skin. We're going to dress you up like your brother. We're going to cover your arms, because Esau was a very hairy man. They look nothing alike. They're completely separate. He's a very hairy man. And he goes, I'm not that hairy. So she's like, it's not a problem. We'll put some goat skin on your arms. Just lower your voice a little bit. Sound like your brother. And then I'm going to send you in to your father. And you're going to essentially trick him into giving you his blessing. Because when a father's time at the end came to go, you get two pieces. You get a birthright and a blessing. Your birthright is the authority in the family, so you're the one who gets to say who's in charge over your other siblings. But the blessing is kind of your future, right? That's what your father would pray over you. And they're very important things. And so Jacob does this. He listens to his mom, and he's like, I'm game. I'll get another one up on Esau, no problem. So he goes into Isaac, and he does this, and his father falls for the trick, right? And his father prays this beautiful blessing over Jacob for the rest of his life. And then Jacob hightails it out. And his mom goes, well, we know what's going to happen now. Your brother's not going to be real happy about this. So I'm going to go send you to the land where my brother lives. So just take a bunch of stuff and go. So obviously Esau comes in out of the field, makes this meal, and comes to his father and goes, here, Dad, I made you the meal. Give me your blessing. And the father goes, Who are you? You're Esau. I've already given you my blessing. And then it all comes out. And as you can imagine, Esau is not happy about this situation. And what it does is it says he comes out and he's screaming and he's angry. And he goes, I want you to give me a blessing. He's standing with his dad. I want you to give me my blessing. And Isaac goes, I can't. I've already given it. And he's so angry to the point that he yells, essentially, he says, I'm going to kill Jacob the next time I see him. When I find him, I'm going to kill him. And so there are many, many years after this point, because Jacob is left and Esau is angry, and they end up burying Isaac. And so all the inheritance, everything like that, goes to Jacob. So Jacob kind of has this position of wealth that he doesn't necessarily rightly deserve by birth. And he's gotten there by being a little sneaky about it. So after this, we have about another 50-some years after this point that Jacob continues to have some drama in his life. He's to make long story short, he's tricked out of a wife, and then he gets 2 wives, and then they don't like each other because they're sisters, and then they play games, and there's this whole drama there that is already coming up. And so wherever Jacob goes, there seems to be something up with him. He's got something going. And you have to think of this whole time, he knows that his brother Esau is out there looking for him. Now, I don't know what some of you think sometimes when you have something that you've done in your past that hasn't been dealt with, but that follows you for a period of time, and something that you're running from, something that you're not dealing with, someone that you've not made amends with. But it's something that continually kind of comes up in your mind. It's something that doesn't sit right. And that's kind of what Jacob has through this. Now, Jacob finally, at the end of this, decides, God, what am I going to do about this? And he comes to God, and God says, I want you to go home and make amends. Like, I want you to go home to your kinsmen. I want you to return there. And Jacob, all this time, and now comes back and goes, oh no, what am I going to do? Because now I have to face my brother, who the last time I heard would rather have me dead. So we go through this whole process of meeting him. Now, as we come back to meet him, we're kind of getting into the meat of things now that I've set up this story of who Jacob is. I'm going to dig a little deeper into some other things, but as Jacob gets closer to getting back to his homeland, he starts to send out messengers. He sends out a messenger. He goes, I want you to go talk to my brother Esau and see what's going on with him. And the messenger comes back and he says, your brother Esau is coming for you. He's got 400 men. He's coming for you. And Jacob immediately starts to panic. And what Jacob does is he starts to use other things to appease his brother. So he goes and he decides, I'm going to send out groups of people in front of me, right? We're all traveling together. And I'm going to send out one group with a whole bunch of sheep and camels. And when you meet Esau, you're going to tell them that I am a servant of Jacob, and these gifts are for you. And then what I'm going to do is then, if that one doesn't work, I'm going to send out another one that says, hey, we're from Esau. Here's another gift. Forgive him. But he does it. He sends out like 4 or 5 groups ahead of him. And finally, they come to this place of the river where they stop, and it's just his wife and his children and kind of their servants. And he has really nothing else to send to his brother as an appeasement for what Jacob has done in his life. Now, there's a lot of things when I was saying we talk about our struggles in our life. And there's a lot of things that we use to appease the struggles and the guilt that we have in our life. I'm going to give you a couple of examples, but it's, if you're somebody who struggles with debt, right? You can call in and ask the debt company to, can you help me out? I want to pay you off. I can pay you a little bit at this time, and then I'll pay you something else later. And there's times that we can do that. We can pay off some debts that way. But if we have wronged somebody in our life, or if something has occurred in our life that we can't handle, there's not a way for us to appease every single debt. Now, we will use other ways. We use what we like to call now coping mechanisms for things. For things that we're struggling with our life, instead of dealing with that, a lot of times we turn to other things. We turn to alcohol, we turn to drugs, we turn to gambling, we turn to all these things to help us deal with our past and what's been going on in our past. But the thing is, we can't bribe an addiction. We can't bribe anything in our life like that. We can't bribe these coping mechanisms. And whatever things that are going on in your life, the coping mechanisms, no matter what they are, whether they're, like I said, alcohol, drugs, food, pain, busyness, work, whatever you are doing to fill that void of pain in your life, pales into comparison to the freedom that Jesus Christ offers. And it's hard for us to understand that. Now, to give you kind of an idea and kind of dig a little deeper into this, I'm going to tell you, obviously everybody knows I come from Colorado, in the country, in the sticks. And we deal with a lot of horses and raising horses. And there's a whole process that they call imprinting with horses, right? So when your horse has a foal, there's a whole process of immediately you want a human contact there, right? So if my horse is having a foal, I immediately am going to be there, and I want to touch them, I want to be with them, I want to be around them, I want to be near them. And then what I'm going to do is, as they get a little bit older, a couple days, I'm going to wrap my arms around them and hold them tight to me. And what that's going to do is they're going to kind of struggle to try and get away, and then they're going to realize that they can't get free. And I'm going to kind of stop and let them go, and then I'm going to do it again, and then I'm going to do it again. And pretty soon that horse stops fighting you. That the baby stops fighting you. And then the next step is to get them halter trained. So you put the halter on, and they don't like that, but you leave it on until they get used to it. And then you attach a lead, and you start to lead them until they get used to that. And that whole process teaches that horse that I'm in charge. Now, I'm going to accompany that with the same way that Satan works in our lives. Because he puts things in our lives and not necessarily, he's not an active one. I don't think Satan's one that comes to your door and goes, I'm going to make you miserable. However, he takes things in your life and makes you not be able to deal with them right. Or gives you situations or people in your life or ways that you were raised so you think that you can't get out of a situation. And the thing is, they do this with imprinting with little horses, but they also do it with wild horses. And that term is called, you're breaking a horse. And there's a point when a horse becomes broken. They don't fight anymore. If you've ever seen wild Mustang roundups, we have a big one up in our area, and those horses will fight till the end before they give up. And that's what Satan does in our life, is he has a hold on us based on lies in our life that we've been told. And he goes through this process of breaking, and he takes everything that has happened in our life and breaks us with that process. And a lot of it, he starts when we're children, when we're kids, and we don't know any better. And some things weren't our fault necessarily. Now, a lot of us had family issues and family struggles. We either grew up without a mom, grew up without a dad, had abusive situations, things like that. And we're raised in those situations, and it's not until much later in life that we realize those things aren't normal, right? It's not until we get into a relationship and we can't, stay with somebody for a long time because we realize that, I've been told my whole life that I'm not worth loving, so why would I look for that? Or when we do meet somebody who is a good person in our life. When we get into a relationship or we become friends with somebody who is good for us and speaks love and life over us, we go, hold the phone. This isn't right. I don't know how to deal with this because we've never had that spoken over us before. And we come into this place of such brokenness that we can't even receive love. Now, again, Jacob was a mama's boy, right? And this is specifically in a society where mama's boys are not, it's a patriarchal society. It's all about being close to your father. It's all about being the man of the family, the leader of the family. And so Jacob, from this time of birth, has already been conditioned to not be attached to his father. He's already got this out of the way. And he's already been, from birth, been kind of wound by his mom, loved by his mom. So one of my first thoughts is Jacob was not born to be a trickster. He wasn't born to be tricky. He was made that way. Jacob didn't come out of the birth canal, immediately as a newborn baby going, I'm going to overtake my family. Now, the beauty of that is that, like I said, we do get the prophecy part of that God knew that was coming. And God spoke it over Rebekah, and that's a whole other story of whether Rebekah was like, well, God said it, so I'm just encouraging it. But there's a lot of things in our life that we get from somewhere that we didn't choose to get something from. Now, I'm getting into the meat of the hello, my name is, right? So we've got the first one is, hello, my name is Jacob, right? Because that was the name he was given at birth, right? So I want you to think today, if you had to come in and if you were out in the world and had to wear a name tag that had your sin, your struggle, your shame on it, what would that name tag have? Now I'm going to give you some examples, and some of them are a little scary. But if you had to come into the room and say, hi, my name is Addicted. How are you today? Or hi, I'm a murderer. How are you? Or hello, my name is Betrayed. Hello, my name is Angry. Hello, my name is Confused. Hello, my name is Alcoholic. Hello, my name is Abused, right? We take on that moniker of all the things that we've had in our past and all that hurt that we've had in our past. And that's what we're carrying forward, saying our name is. Because that's what we've experienced. Now, I'm going to take a moment to get a little real with you guys. And the reason I am talking about this sermon today and I'm talking about this topic today is because this sermon hit me like an absolute ton of bricks. And to the point where I laughed because Wednesday, it was about 10 minutes before coming over for Bible study, and that whole evening was just funny anyways, because I was about to message Willie and say, I'm not coming. Because I was in the bathroom with a cold washcloth over my eyes because I had been crying so hard, my eyes were puffy and red. And the thing is, church sometimes is portrayed as a place where we come to get a nice little pat on the back and to sing nice songs and to say hello to each other and love on each other. But the thing is, God intended the church to be a place that we come to get fixed. And it's always been one of my favorite sayings about, church is not a place for healed people. It's a hospital for the broken. And when I come to church, I'm coming because I've got something that I need God to work out in me. And I want Him to fix something in me. And I'm waiting for Him to speak a word over me that I need to hear. Now, I know that a lot of times I can't speak for Willie or for Sharon or anybody else who stood up behind the pulpit, but there's a lot of times that people in general, and even I like to sit there and I look at pastors and I look at preachers and go, their life is absolutely perfect. God has chosen them to be a preacher. They've done nothing wrong in their lives. They came out of the womb with a halo. But that's not the truth of it. Because every person who has been anointed and been placed behind a pulpit has a history. There's a lot of them that have done some pretty horrible things. I can give you Paul, for instance. In the Bible, we all kind of know about Paul. Used to kill Christians, do some pretty horrific things. And even he says in Romans, he says, "For I know nothing good dwells in me. That is in my flesh. For I have a desire to do what's right, but not the ability to carry it out. For I do not do the good I want, but the evil I do not want is what I keep doing." And that's Paul. And this is after he's been saved. This is him preaching to other churches. And he's saying, you're looking to me going, "Hey, Paul, you look like a pretty right-on guy." And he's going, "Hold on. I am just like the rest of you. I have things in my life that I'm not proud of, but things that have been changed." Now, I can tell you that if you saw my name tag today, I would have a couple of those things on my name tag, probably plus some that aren't up there. And I will tell you that Satan does his best to remind me of those things on a daily, weekly, hourly basis. And you see, when I was a child, there were a lot of things that are done to us in our life that aren't our fault, but they change who we are. They change our trajectory in life. And I will tell you that it's not my fault that when I was a child, I was sexually abused. Not my fault, right? But that has completely changed the outlook of every situation that has come after that. And I will tell you that after that, where it was supposed to be a safe place for me to be in the church, became one of theology that broke me even further. And then just that time when I'm starting to come back to God and go, okay, that hurt a little bit, and I'm gonna move forward some more. Then I had pastors and leaders in the church who broke me even further. Now, you have this kid who's now in her teens that has been broken repeatedly by people in places of trust, in power, people I respected. And then now every relationship since that moment has had a touch of everything that wasn't my fault in it. And isn't it just the way that Satan works, is to try and default you for something that isn't your fault? Now, since that moment, I've done a whole lot of work in my life, and God has done a whole lot of work in my life for this. But it's also something that has affected relationships past that. Like I said earlier, I had struggled for a really long time with being friends with people. Because you're just going to do what the last person did. So I'm not going to be friends with anybody. I'm not going to be outgoing and bubbly and fun and get close to you because I know what happens when I get close to you. And so Jacob, in the same breath, has these same things happening in his life. He's had things that happened in his life that weren't his fault. He was prophesied over before he was even born, that he would overcome his brother. And that's how his mom ran the house. And that's why his mom encouraged him. He didn't come out of the womb and go, "Hey, Mom, let's form a little joint here group. I hear that I'm supposed to overtake my brother. Are you going to help me or no?" That's not the case. And so after years and years of running away from things, we have to come to a point where we have to stop running from things. And I will say I'm not going to read the whole thing, but on Wednesday, which was beautiful because I'm really glad I was at Bible study on Wednesday, but we were talking about Psalm 119. And it's talking about David, and we were talking about how David himself is kind of a wreck of a person, right? And in this specific psalm that we were reading, there's a part of it, and I'm going to try and read through it without keeping you here all afternoon, because I still have to get to chapter 32. We'll get there. But it says this, and it says, I am small and despised, but I do not forget your precepts. Your righteousness is an everlasting righteousness, and your law is truth. Trouble and anguish have found me, yet your commandments are my delight and my joy. Your righteous testimonies are everlasting. Give me understanding, the ability to learn and have a teachable heart, that I may live. I cried with all my heart, answer me, O Lord. I will observe your statutes. I cried to you, save me, and you will keep your testimonies. I rise before dawn and I cry out for help. I will wait for your word. My eyes anticipate the night watches, and I awake before the call of the watchman, so that I may meditate on your word. Hear my voice according to your steadfast loving kindness, O Lord. Renew and refresh me according to your ordinances. Those who follow after wickedness and approach, they are far from your law. You are near, O Lord, and all your commandments are truth. Of old I have known from your testimonies that you have founded them forever. Look upon my agony and rescue me, for I do not forget your law. Now, the reason that part hit me was because I was raised in church. I was baptized at the age of 8, right? I was a Christian at 8. And all the stuff I spoke about earlier happened after I became a Christian. So these things in my life have had a different outlook on them. And I really sat with David on this because there were times that I was heartbroken, and I cried out to God going, give me a reason for this pain. Not that he allowed it to happen, because that's not how God works. But I need a reason. You got to give me a reason for this. I need to know. And so that's the place that Jacob has come to as well. He's come to this place going, God, I've been through a whole lot of it. And I'm facing the one person who wants me dead, and I need you to do something about this moment. And so we come to, hello, my name is Jacob. And we come to chapter 32, which I promised we'd get to. Now, the first thing that chapter 32 says is the same night he arose, so he's coming back home. The same night he arose and took his 2 wives, 2 female servants, and his 11 children, and he crossed the ford of the Yabok. Now, just for fun, because you know how I am, if you look at the river Yabok that they've come to, it's a river, a stream. And if you look at that, what Yabok means in Hebrew, it means a pouring out or an emptying. So he has come to this place, and this is the last kind of step that he has to make in order to approach Esau. And so he wakes up in the middle of the night. And how many of us have had the things in our life wake us up in the middle of the night? I know, yeah, there's some hands going up. I mean, literally, there's things that wake you up in the middle of the night. That go, hey, I know you've been dealing with this fine for a while, but are you awake yet? And I'm going to let you sit here for a while and think in it, right? And you stew in it. And that's where Jacob's at. And he sits there and he goes, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to send my family across. I'm going to send my family across. So he sends everything that is important to him, and he pours it out. He sends it over the Yabok. And he waits there alone. Now, there's many ways to look at this next little piece here. Whether you can, I'll let you take it into however you want to interpret it. But there's a point when we also have to fight for something. And we have to fight for ourselves and fight for our faith. And I love it because this specific chapter is titled, Jacob Wrestled with God. Jacob wrestled with God. And so, as I continue into verse 23, it says, he took them, his family, and he sent them across the stream with everything else that he had. And Jacob was left alone. Because when it comes down to it, the only person that can fight for you is you. And this is one of those things. I was raised around a whole lot of other religions and stuff like that. And one of the things I always hated about it is one of them specifically said, you can pray your family into heaven. You can pray your family into salvation. And I'm going to tell you right now, that's not the case. That's not the case. Because when it comes to that time that we have to meet Jesus face to face, we're the only one that can stand up for ourselves. We're the only one who can leave everything out on the table. We're the only ones that can surrender everything out. The only ones. No one else can do it for us. So Jacob is standing here and he's all alone. And he's decided, you know what? Enough's enough. Enough's enough. He goes, I'm going to step into the ring. I'm stepping in here. I've left everything. I've given everything over. And all I have left is me and God. Now, there's different versions. There's some say that he wrestled with an angel. There's some that say he wrestled with a man. There's some say he wrestled with God. I'll let you take that how you want to take that. But it says he stood there and he says, a man wrestled with him until the breaking of day. When the man saw that he did not prevail against Jacob, he touched his hip socket, and Jacob's hip was put out of joint as he wrestled him. Now, this is the middle of the night, right? He wakes up, sends his family across, and then he's standing there, and this man comes to wrestle with him in the middle of the night. And they wrestle for a while. They wrestle for a while. It's not saying, oh, it's a couple minutes and tagged him out. They wrestled him for a while. And it wasn't until the break of day that the man goes, come on. And so he touched his hip, and his hip went out of place. And the thing was, after this point, Jacob still didn't give up. He's still wrestling. And he goes, the man said, let me go, for day has broken. We've been here for a while. But Jacob said, I will not let you go unless you bless me. Now, I look at that and sit there and go, when I take a step inside the boxing ring and I'm wrestling with God with everything that has gone on in my past, and I'm going, I'm not leaving here until you fix this. I'm not leaving you until you tell me what it was for. I'm not leaving here until you change me. Now, the next part he says, and he said to him, what is your name? And he said, Jacob. Now, think back to your name tag. What does the world call you? Right? The world called him Jacob. Jacob called himself a plethora of things. The world put a lot of names on Jacob. Now, the next verse continues, said, then he said, so the man said, your name will no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have struggled with God and with men, and you have prevailed. So your name will no longer be called Jacob, but Israel. Now, if you look at the names of Israel, I could continue for the next 4 Sundays on all the things that Israel is called in the Bible. I gave you a very short list. So when he has wrestled with God, and he's come out and he's like, I'm not giving up until you change me, God says, okay. He says, the world has known you as Jacob. You have been known by Jacob. Jacob means usurper, heel grabber, trickster. I am giving you a new name. I'm giving you the name of Israel. And if we look at Israel and everything that it means in the Bible, the new name tag that Jacob is getting is saying, I am holy and set apart. I am chosen. I am loved. I am redeemed. I am son of God. I am blessed. I am promised. I am treasured. I'm a treasured possession. I am owned. I am pursued. I am God's person, and I am a kingdom priest. Now, if you think that change from Jacob's first name into this new name is quite a drastic difference to who we are and who the world says we are. So Jacob left this wrestling match with God being a different person than when he came in. Now you'll notice that after Jacob, after this situation happens, he still goes by the name of Jacob, right? His name is still Jacob. His name is not changed like Saul into Paul. His name is still Jacob. But God calls him Israel. God calls him chosen. The world may call him usurper, trickster, heel grabber. But that is not how God calls him. But from this moment forward, this is now how Jacob is known to God. He can move forward going, I know that I was a mama's boy, and I know this happened. I know my history, I know what I did to my brother. And when I look at my situation, I go, I know that all of that stuff happened, and I was that. But God has called me chosen, loved. And I can tell you there's so many times I've gone in my life where I've been challenged about being up here, and that's a whole different topic. But when God changed my name, when I wrestled with God, and he called me Israel, he gave me a whole new title. And he's used everything in my life for something different. Now, there's this next point, this verse 29, and it says, Jacob then asked the man, please tell me your name. But he said, why is it that you ask my name? And he blessed him. Now again, earlier I said there's a birthright and a blessing. There's two separate things. When Jacob wrestled with God, he got his birthright. I got my name, who I am in you. And then that second piece is he got his blessing. Because he said, who are you? And the funny thing is when I read this, and I imagine God saying it to me, I imagine him going, why are you even asking me that? You've been preparing for this moment. You've been angry, you've been upset, you've been mad. Why are you even asking who I am? You challenged me. Why are you asking? And the fact is, I also see him sitting there going, you know who I am. You came to me. You approached me, and I will bless you for pouring out everything to me. Giving everything you've got to me. Now, the last couple verses of this. It says, so Jacob called the place where he wrestled, he called the place Peniel, saying, for I have seen God face to face, and yet my life has been delivered. Because up until this point, and honestly forever, nobody has seen the face of God. Nobody. And so you have this point where Jacob has wrestled with God. Now, I look at it, it's the middle of the night, and last time I wrestled somebody, I wasn't wrestling them face to face, right? You're wrestling, you're on the floor, you're angry, you're all, and so you don't look at somebody. And so when he says, I've seen God face to face, and yet my life has been delivered, I battled God. I came to him and said, I need you to tell me who I am. And he delivered on it. He delivered. Now, no one comes out of wrestling God without a limp. And that's exactly what happens to Jacob. And it says he came out with a limp because God touched that place in his hip. He forever walked with a limp. Now, there's a lot of us that would come out, if we battled God and we came out on the side of, God has told me I am this. God has told me I'm a kingdom priest. There's a lot of us that would let that ego fight up in us. And go, well, God told me I'm a kingdom priest. What did he tell you? Now, no one challenges God without walking out with a limp. So for the rest of my life, I will know that everything I've gone through. Will it hurt? Yeah. Is it what I focus on anymore? No. Everything that we have gone through in our lives is to teach us something and to lead us somewhere and for God to be able to use somewhere. We will forever have a limp when we come to Jesus. But the thing is that it's not a limp that bothers us. It's just a limp that people see. And you should be wearing that like a badge of honor. Look, I've come, I gave God everything I had. He changed me, and this is who I am now. Now, there's a lot of people that have had a relationship with God, and they've never come to the yabok. They've never come to that point of emptying out. And they walk around with a broken leg that's never going to heal. And they're angry, and they're bitter, and they're upset. And they're going to struggle with things because they're never going to bring that struggle to the foot of the cross. So God is calling you, if you haven't heard this yet, God is calling you to wrestle with him. God is calling you to bring your struggles, those things that don't seem that big in your life. He's calling you to bring them and give them over to him. Because like I said earlier, all the coping mechanisms in the world pale in comparison to the freedom of that. Now, is my testimony, my story, a sore subject in my life? Yes. However, I will tell you, I no longer have to have a mechanism for when somebody says something. I am no longer triggered when somebody says something. Because God has healed that in me. And he offers that healing to everyone. If you'll just come and submit and give it over to him, he'll offer it to you. Now, the last little verse there that I'm going to read is, you need to have a closing into this, right? Or I could leave you on a cliffhanger and let you just think that Jacob and Esau never came back to battle each other and all this. But the thing is, we learn that Jacob lives a long life. But just a few verses down from where we're at in chapter 32, we get into chapter 33. And I'm just going to read one specific verse. And it says, but Esau ran to meet him and embraced him and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. So all this time, Jacob has been afraid of Esau and what Esau's going to do. He's a 77-year-old man. His brother's 77. It's been a long time coming. And he's been going, I'm waiting for this moment. I'm surely going to die. And I can just imagine him crossing that river and coming up to greet Esau and sitting there and going, preparing, going, okay, God, I wrestled with you. You took it all. I'm ready. And I bet you anything, Jacob thought he was going to get a different reception in that moment than he actually got. Esau ran to him. Because there's things in life that we've been running from that aren't actually chasing us anymore. Or they're chasing us for a whole other reason. So if you get anything out of today, it's the fact that when we surrender our lives to Christ, when we give our lives over to God, we're no longer, my name is. We are now called Israel. We are a child of the King. And he would do anything for us. And he has done everything for us. And that's all I've got to share with you today. So I know the last song, I believe, is What a Beautiful Name. So if you want to stand and join us for that last song, I'll see you do that.